internet people. My name is Dave, and I am a regular host of 80s Reboot Overdrive. Today, I'm doing something a little different. I'm attempting to do something pretty much that I ripped off from Will Wheaton, and this is just a random thought mini podcast. And I've been wrestling with the name of what to call this thing. My current incarnation is 80s Micro Reboot Overdrive. Really, all it is going to be just a sampling of random thoughts that I have for the day. I don't know how often I'm going to do this, or even if you're interested in listening to it. I'm hoping you are. I did rip this off from Will Wheaton because I was listening to Radio Free Burrito, and he does a lot of these little micro podcasts where it's just him talking about something that's on his brain for the day. You know, there's everyday life that's going on all the time, and I thought it'd be fun to kind of share some of the background stuff that's going on in my life that's related to the podcast, or different things that's happening that in my brain I have linked back to the 80s somehow. Today, what I want to talk about is the relationship in my brain between the movie 16 Candles and my daughter going to her first homecoming dance. So it's funny how the brain kind of puts those links together, but like I said, I don't know if you're going to even be interested in listening to me ramble. In all honesty, I don't know why you would be. I went back and listened to my first solo podcast that I did on Visionaries, and to be honest, I wasn't that impressed with myself. So I don't even know why I'm doing this. I should just not do this concept and just keep it to myself. But giving this some more thought, I'm going to throw it out there and see what happens with it. And by all means, if you're not interested in listening to me ramble, please don't. But at the same time, if you do like it, shoot a quick Twitter over to 80s Reboot or an email at 80sreboot@gmail.com. Let me know you like this, and I'll continue it. And then maybe I'll also encourage my other co-hosts to do their own kind of random micro reboot overdrive podcasts. We're also going to keep this simple, so I'm not going to spend a lot of time with editing, so you might be hearing a lot of random noises in the background because I haven't secluded myself as I do with other podcasts. I'm going to keep the production of this really simple, that way it's just out there and done with. So with that said, insert bumper music here.
Sword of omens, give me sight beyond sight.
Greetings, Starfighter. You are about to listen to the totally super awesome 80s Reboot Overdrive podcast. Always remember, no matter where you go, there you are. Ready Player One.
So we're at October 11th, 2015. It's just a little bit after 4 p.m. in the afternoon. I re-listened to the beginning part of the intro that I did before the bumper, and I realized that I probably was a little too harsh on myself regarding the Visionaries podcast. And I just want to let you know that where my head's at lately in regards to the podcast is that at the beginning of doing this podcast, I almost felt like I had to be some sort of de facto expert around whatever the topic is that we're talking about. And as I've started to listening to other podcasts and enjoying them, I realize that's not always the case. A lot of times it's the storytelling aspect of it. And I was getting too hung up on trying to be an expert when I did Visionaries, that I was relying too much on looking at various pages like Wikipedia to sound knowledgeable, rather than just talk about why I enjoyed the cartoon that much back in the 80s. These 80s micro reboot Overdrive podcasts are really going to be just me going off the cuff, do my best not to even look up anything on the computer. It's just going to be me talking about whatever it is that happens to be in my brain for the day. So, the Visionaries thing, while I love the cartoon, I love the concept, and I wanted to have a podcast about that topic out there, I just think I didn't execute it that well because I was relying too much on being a knowledge source for that cartoon. And I think there's plenty of those that are already out there on the internet, so I didn't really need to be that. And I should have just spent more time talking about how much I enjoyed the toys and whatnot. So that's my thought and reason why I was a little harsh on myself about the Visionaries podcast. The other part that I wanted to talk about real quickly is that the micro reboot name, I was going through various names to call these things. And at first it was going to be 80s mini reboot overdrive. And then my mind started going to think about when we do a reboot on a computer, what could be done faster on a reboot, and what did we have back in the 80s? And the only thing that came to mind was, if you know computers, modern day computers, you can do a hibernate, and that just didn't make sense to me. So I couldn't get my mind off of the computer concept. And then I started to play around with the Overdrive name. So then it was going to be like 80s reboot underdrive. And I thought that was kind of fun for a while in my brain. But for some reason it just didn't sound as cool as Overdrive. And then since I landed at 80s micro reboot overdrive, I started to pick up play on micro machines. So if you remember those from back in the 80s, we had those little mini toy cars called micro machines. So this is my play on those words. So we're doing a 80s micro reboot overdrive, and that's where I got the name and the different concepts that were going through my brain today as I decided to do this. So lately I have become more of a fan than I ever was about liking songs that are in 80s movies. And the one that comes to mind recently, and for some reason I have not gotten tired of re-listening to it. In fact, I've gotten it a few times that I've brought up on YouTube. Not that there's actual video to go with it, it's just a picture of the band on their album that released the song, but I just have been enjoying re-listening to it so many times. It's actually from the scene in 16 Candles. In this case, it's where Samantha finally gets the nerve up to talk to Jake Ryan at the school dance by the band The Divinyls. It's called Ring Me Up. And it's the scene where she says something to him, or she tries to say something to him. He smiles at her. She kind of freaks out and then turns and walks away. But as he's grabbing his girlfriend's coat, one of the other football players picks up his girlfriend, kind of carrying her, kind of like as a teddy bear or something like that. And, they leave. And the reason why, for some reason this is stuck in my brain lately is, because there's so many great fun stuff that was going on in that movie with 16 Candles. And it came to the forefront yesterday because my oldest daughter, who is a freshman in high school, God help me, went to her first homecoming dance. And as she was getting ready to go to that, I had various thoughts of, everything that was going on at school dance on 16 Candles, and more so around the after party. So I was grilling her about, are you going to some sort of, group of friends going out after the dance and going to go hang out at somebody's house or something like that? Is there going to be an after party? And I just had visions of, people drinking too much and, some weird things where people are sticking, nerds underneath the glass table, and so of course I started, my mind started getting overactive, thanks to John Hughes. And luckily, it was very, in real life, boring. She didn't have any kind of after party. She ended up going with a group of friends to a local restaurant that they just had some ice cream. So very boring. The worst thing that was going on there was there were people grind dancing, so dirty dancing. Obviously, that's something that's not even remotely okay in my brain for her to be doing that kind of thing, but at the same time, if that's the worst thing that's happened as compared to a John Hughes movie, I think I can live with that. I think I can get along with that. Thank God it wasn't her that was doing any of the grind dancing or dirty dancing. Thank you, John Hughes, for putting that imagery in my head. Because growing up, I was the boring guy. I was not going to those. I wasn't going to a lot of dances, and I wasn't going to parties. I was a guy that was sitting at home playing with his Apple IIe computer. So the worst scenario that would have happened to me is maybe I would have found some way to build a girl, but that never happened. And it's not like I really tried that hard either, but if there was a way that that could have happened, I think I would have enjoyed that and tried that. A la Weird Science. So that is kind of where I was yesterday, as my daughter was getting ready to go to homecoming, and my brain going to all the hijinks that was involved in the John Hughes movies. Fortunately for me, real life isn't exactly like that, so at least when I'm worried about what's going on with my daughter and as my other two kids get older, I don't have to worry that much because it's hopefully not going to be as bad as the movies. But I do expect there to be some sort of drama along the way. Not that naive. But in this particular case, the dramatic piece of the movie was way worse than reality. And I definitely can live with that. So the last thing I wanted to do was kind of a bulletin board for things that I think are kind of important of what's going on right now. A friend of the podcast, Alan Stewart, who is the curator of Hall of Heroes Superhero Museum in Elkhart, Indiana. We had an interview with him in the past where he not only talked about the museum, but we also spent some considerable time talking about some iconic comic books of the 80s. Bringing him up now is because he's going to be on October 12th. They're going to be debuting on an episode of Fast and Loud. I guess what he has is the Iron Man Shelby Cobra Tony Stark falls on when he's trying out the Iron Man suit for the first time. And this Fast and Loud episode, which is on October 12th, Monday, is going to be telling the story of how he got that. So it's very exciting. I recommend you check it out. Check local listings to see when it's on and watch. Another cool thing that's going on is on October 17th, there is this thing called the Rockford Record Crawl 2015. And we did an on-site podcast at Toad Hall. Toad Hall, a very cool place. If you've never been there, I recommend you go check them out. They're taking part of this Rockford Record Crawl with other various record stores within the Rockford area. So that's happening on October 17th between 10 a.m. 7 p.m. Central. I don't even know why I said Central, because you'd have to be in Rockford to do it anyway. But it looks very cool. If you're into vinyl, as I know a lot of you are, I'd suggest getting out to Rockford on Saturday and visiting Toad Hall along with the other record shops that are participating. So that is kind of my pegboard, community board, if you will, of things that are going on with the different people that we've interacted with for the podcast. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and close this out. Like I said, I didn't want this to be too long. If you liked listening to this, please let me know at 80sreboot@gmail.com or just Twitter at 80sreboot. Or very simply just send me, a message through social media that says, please don't do those ever again. You're killing us. So either way, I'll take criticism either way. Anyway, I had a little fun doing this, and I hope you enjoyed listening to my rambling. If not, then, well, at least I tried. And I went ahead and executed it rather than deleting it like I'm playing in my brain right now, because I really want to put it out there, but then again, maybe I shouldn't, because, who really cares what Dave thinks? I don't know. You let me know. Thank you for reliving the 80s with me, and I will talk to you guys later. Bye. We hope you've enjoyed this show. This podcast is part of the 80s Reboot Overdrive channel on Southgate Media Group. You can follow us on Facebook on the 80s Reboot group page. We're also on Twitter and Tumblr at 80s Reboot. We invite you to check out all the wonderful podcasts and blogs available at southgatemediagroup.com. And thank you for reliving the 80s.